Good to have you all here. If you are new to Bayside, welcome to you. My name is Mark. I'm one of the guys that hangs around here. Good to have you here. If you have a Bible, Romans chapter 3 is where we are. We're doing a series in the book of Romans. And let me start off this way. I told this story a couple weeks ago to the Saturday night service. So if you were here for that, forgive me for hearing this again. You can, you write your emails of complaint to myself. I'll read it, Ray Johnson at BaysideOnline.com. So here's the question. You're in a fire. What are you taking with you? Your house is on fire. What are you going to grab? Your kids? Okay, it's great. One of the services didn't even bother with that. All right, they're just like, I don't know. Good solution. What is it? Pictures. Okay, you're going to take pictures. What else? Pets. Okay, you're going to grab the pets. Okay, I like that. One guy said his father. That was nice as well. In a fire, you're going to take the stuff that is a priority rises to the top. And the story I told a couple weeks ago was when I was about 19 years old, my parents were out. I wanted to eat. I wanted to cook craft dinner. At this time, I was not a chef. And so this is how I actually thought you cook craft dinner. I poured dry noodles from the box into a bowl, stuck the bowl into the microwave, put it on for 9 minutes with no water, and hit start and went and had a shower. Okay, that's the genius I was. And of course, I'm in the shower, and don't picture that for too long. And I hear the fire alarm going off, and I jump out and I run, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And the whole microwave has exploded. The kitchen's on fire. It was crazy. And of course, in that moment, I hear the fire trucks coming. What do you think I ran out? What do you think I took? Of all the things, I took the towel, all right? That was around my waist because I didn't want to be naked, nude, weird guy, perv out in the neighborhood running around. So in those moments of fire, priorities rise to the top, right? We figured out. So when it comes to the Bible, what is the passage that you run out of the fire with? What's the passage that you take to the desert island? If the question was, what is Christianity ultimately about? Arguably, historically, it would be the passage we're looking at today. It would be Romans, this is where we are, Romans chapter 3, verse 21 to 28. I'll probably get to 25, is what Martin Luther, if I'm lucky, Martin Luther, who was a theologian in the 1500s, called this passage the center of the whole Bible. One writer has said it's the greatest paragraph ever written. All right, so just so you know, we're gonna get a little heavy. Some sermons are like, candy, and they're fun, and they're, whatever. It's like, yeah, okay. And some sermons are vitamins and vegetables. They don't taste as good. They're not as fun, but they're necessary. This is one of those, all right? So if you guys are ready, you ready to do this? We're gonna get in some theology. You got your bulletin here. This is where we're at this point, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. This is me and the team working together and me just giving up at this point. That's what that is, all right? That's me just doing my best to fit in here. So we'll see how it goes. So write some notes. And we'll jump into this. Romans chapter 3, verse 21 we'll start with. And here we go. Verse 21, but now. Okay, stop right there. So this is really important. You got to understand something about what Paul's done. For 20 verses, this guy has just hit us with so much negativity. He has said, you are sinful. You are turned in on yourself. You're narcissistic. No one seeks for God. You are lost. You are actually in such a state that you need all of these terrible things. And there's no better word in any language than the word but. Sounds odd. If what has preceded that has been a bunch of bad news, right? So you have this cancer diagnosis, but we can do something about it, right? Your spouse has been in an accident, but they're alive, they're okay. We're gonna go visit them right now. The word but is this kind of pivot word that is bringing really good news in light of a lot of bad news. And the reality is there's a lot of bad news about humankind, sinfulness, but sometimes when the Bible hits us with really hard things, it's really important because sometimes hard times and hearing hard things is how we grow. right? Like I remember my wife and I, back in 2004, we moved from Toronto. We grew up in Toronto and we moved to Vancouver. And so we drove across the whole country and we didn't have any friends, any family. We just got in a car, drove across the middle of the summer, down through Montana. We're just like dripping wet. We got no air conditioning in the car. We're dipping like socks in soaking wet ice so we could put it on our foreheads. Someone said, you gotta go down and see you gotta the Mount Rushmore. So we drive 10 hours out of our way to go see this thing. Not worth it. So we go down there, and we come up to Vancouver and we find our place in Vancouver. We're super jacked about this place in Vancouver. And we get there, first night, there's this guy living under us and he's smoking weed and it comes up through the vents. So night after night after night, our whole apartment's just hotboxed, all right? This guy's smoking weed. We're hungry all the time, so the grocery bill is getting expensive. And my wife is just crying every night. Like, have we made a mistake? Have we done something wrong? Have we done something off? And the reality is, we never prayed more as a couple than in those moments, right? That's the reality of life. You get the squeeze, and then you go deep with God, or you become dependent on God. This is what the Apostle Paul is trying to draw out. He's trying to say, look, everyone's lost. No one seeks for God. There's no one who is righteous, but don't worry about it. God has actually done something. There's been a pivot moment, but now God has actually moved and he's solved this problem. But he hasn't solved it through a new religion or a new ethic or a new philosophy. He's done it with something that has flipped the whole script upside down, which tells us that all the ways that humankind has tried to connect to God, Eastern meditation, Eastern philosophy, Western ideas of philosophy and religion, they have all been wrong. God has done something that is shutting down all religion, and we're gonna find out what it is. And so he says, in this moment, something great has happened. But now, they said, apart from the law, the righteousness of God. So this word righteousness, I wrote a master's thesis on the book of Romans, and I probably spent 2 months reading about this phrase right here, the righteousness of God, all right? The Greek word is dikaiosune theus, and it means a lot of different things that scholars debate. So I'm gonna spend the next 40 minutes telling you all the nuances of them. Bored? No, I'm not. So the reality is it means justice, it means righteousness. There's all kinds of debate. Is it about God? Is it righteousness from God? The reality is, it's a couple things that I want to say about it. The first, it's about the justice of God. The question of the justice and the righteousness, or what N.T. Wright calls the covenant faithfulness of God, which is, I think, a really good translation for what this is, which is the question of, has God actually been faithful to his covenant? He started with Abraham. He said, through Abraham, I'm gonna solve all the sin and the problems of the world, the brokenness, the pain. And so has God actually done this? Apostle Paul's sitting around there saying, God has not been faithful to his covenant. He actually has not succeeded. Here we are, there's still genocide, there's still pain, there's still disease. He said he was gonna solve it through Abraham, he hasn't done it. And the Apostle Paul is going back and he's working through and going, maybe he has done it actually, but he's done it in a way that no one thought. Everyone thought it was gonna be through all the Jewish people at the end of time, and God has done it through one faithful Jew in the middle of time, the person of Jesus. And he's actually been faithful to his covenant in that. And one of the things that we wrestle with, I think, is we look around. I talk to skeptics all the time. I was a skeptic growing up. If you're a skeptic and you're here, awesome, you're here exploring Christianity. One of the questions you might have is, you look at the evil and suffering of the world and go, God isn't just. He hasn't been faithful. Is he completely blind to what's going on in the world? And actually, 2 Peter raises that exact question and says, is God just not paying attention because there's a lot of suffering and pain in the world? Why isn't he coming back yet? Right? And Christians love to talk about Jesus coming back, right? Let's get Jesus back. It's the end times. It's the end times. Let's bring him back. I remember I showed up to the church. I lived outside the church my whole life. I came back. Oh, this whole youth group was like, it's the end times. Because it was like 1999. Remember when the clocks were gonna flip over and the whole world was gonna melt because some guy didn't put something into a computer? And so I was like, everyone literally at this church had a generator because all power was gonna be eliminated and we were gonna eat canned goods. And we had we were Canadians. We didn't have guns. We had like billy clubs, whatever. And the whole world is gonna end and they're watching movies. Like my wife grew up in the church. They'd watch all these end times movies where the guy's like shaving and then the rapture happens and his like, and these were her nightmare. And I came into this culture, I'm like, you guys are whacked. We love to talk about the end times. Jesus coming back, it's the Russia from the north, all this stuff. The reality is, here's what Peter says. Guys, don't be distracted by those kinds of things. The reason he hasn't come back yet is so that as many people as possible will repent and give their life to Jesus. That's why he hasn't come back. So all of us are going, quick, come back. Listen, I come to Jesus in 1998. I'm glad he didn't come back in 1997. Right? Or else I'd be out. That's the point of Peter. We're all jacked up. We want it to be the end times. He's going, really? Instead of sitting around with your 8 Christian friends, eating cookies, trying to figure out the dynamics of the end times, why don't you go reach a non-Christian? Why don't you go tell your friends about Jesus and show them that this is the justice and the righteousness of God? All right, little too touched a nerve there. Okay, let's continue on. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Righteousness, notice it's this, of God. I don't want to be offensive because I'm new. But the story of the world ain't about you. It's about him. And this is where we get it wrong, right? We get up for our devos in the morning and we get our coffee ready. And if the 6 verses we're reading in Leviticus aren't about us, we're just, sorry. Lord forbid the Bible be about him for a few minutes. It ain't about you. It's about him. And when we struggle and get bored, when's the sermon going to be about me? When's the Bible? Yeah, there's 20 chapters in Exodus that have to do with the size of curtains in the temple because God's doing a thing. He'll get to you. Chill. This is about him first and foremost. And when we want it to be about us, that's a word that, again, I don't want to be offensive. That's immaturity, all right? Like that's what kids do. Right? You ever met a child? They ain't about you, man. They're about, listen, a couple years ago, I went to Disneyland. My family, my oldest daughter, Sienna, she wanted to go on this ride. She's like, Dad, it's 2-hour, 40-minute wait to get on this roller coaster. I'm like, well, we're not going then. I'm not gonna waste my time with this nonsense. And then my consciousness kicked in and said, why don't you be a good role model and show her what a good parent is? Like you gotta show her, look, this is what you're gonna do for your kids one day. You're gonna sacrifice. And so I did it. I went in that line. I sat there for 2 hours, 40 minutes. My phone ran out of battery, so I just stood there like a psychopath, just looking around at people, talking to people. She comes back 2 hours later. Hey, Dad, thanks for doing this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, baby, the reason I did this was because one day you're gonna do this for your kids. And she just goes, no, I won't. My husband will. I'm like, what is... How young do they teach these women how to function through life? Shrewd as serpents. Right? This is what I'm talking about. Like, kids are so narcissistic and into themselves, they can't think outside themselves. And Paul's going, the story of the universe, the story of the Bible, the story of the world actually isn't about you, it's about God. And when you make Christianity about Christians and not about Christ, people walk away from Christianity because they look at the church and they go, faith was all about a leader. Faith was all about the person on stage. Faith was all about the people in the seats. And when they fail you, then you eject out of Christianity. We got a whole generation of young people deconstructing and leaving their faith because they thought it was about the people. The people fail, the people make mistakes, the people show themselves to be hypocritical, and then they go, well, I'm out, because they didn't realize this story is actually not about people, it's about him. There was a study that was done, this poll that was done a couple years ago that asked Christians and non-Christians about their activities in the last 30 days. And there was no statistical difference between these 10 activities between Christians and non-Christians. Gambling, visiting a pornographic website, taking something that didn't belong to them, saying mean things behind someone's back, consulting a medium or a psychic. What? Guys, I mean, I know this is California. If you're a Christian, you can't go to a psychic. Right? like that is you trying to control, I wanna know the future. I wanna know the future. And somewhere along the line, you got so entitled that you think God's supposed to tell you the future about everything. He's supposed to tell me who I'm supposed to marry. What's their name? I got my alphagetti. Maybe he'll give me a sign. No, he won't. It's whoever you marry, love them like Christ loved the church. Good night. I'm not telling you, man. Where did we get a generation that thinks I'm entitled to know everything? So you go to a psychic, you need to know your future. You go to a medium. That's not the way of it. This is what the gap between knowledge and life is. It's faith. Right? Did you walk with him? So no statistical difference. Having a physical fight or abusing someone, using illegal drugs, saying something to someone that's not true, drinking enough alcohol to be considered legally drunk. No statistical difference. The only statistical difference was that Christians recycled less than non-Christians. Couldn't make it up. Which is insane. I don't even know if you guys recycle down here that much because I got 2 garbage cans and it's like, no, just throw it. In Canada, we got like 14 cans. All right, you got to separate the little tab on your pop can, your soda, whatever you call it, soda can, and your banana peels. I mean, we're about the environment. Americans are like, I don't know, throw it in there. They sort it somewhere. That's what someone told me. They don't, guys. It's just a big hole. I'm sure my printer is getting sorted by somebody. No, it's not. America. So, here's the problem. You got a generation going, it's about me, it's about me. Now, here's the next thing he says. You got to make it about him, not us. It's been made known, this righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. So, this righteousness of God that's been made known about Jesus, which is what he's going to talk about, has been in the law and the prophets. Now, this is Paul's way of talking about the Bible. The law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the prophets, Malachi, Isaiah, Ezekiel. He's saying this is the Bible, and the Bible has testified about Jesus. So this is really important for you to understand because some of you have made the mistake in life that the Bible, there's only 2 ways to read the Bible. It's either about you or it's about him. And when you, some of you were raised in the church and you were told that the Bible's about you. And so when you read a Bible story, you're like, okay, I gotta be like Abraham. I gotta be like Noah. I gotta be like David. I gotta, and preachers love this stuff because you gotta be like David. You gotta pick up those stones and slay the giants of anxiety in your life. You gotta slay the giant of financial stress. And we're like, yeah, if I just work harder, maybe I could be like David too. And that's a terrible way to read the Bible because it will crush you because you ain't David. And let me tell you something, David wasn't David either. You ever read that story? It's about God winning the battle for him, not David in his own strength, figuring out 5 principles to be able to slay the giant of financial need. It works for a sermon. It's not the way the Bible's written. Let me tell you how to read the David and Goliath story. You know who you are in that story? You are the Israelites hiding up in the bushes, hoping that somebody would go and do something because you're terrified of that giant down there. You're terrified. And here's what happened. One faithful Israelite went into the valley for you, and he defeated the giant of Satan, sin, and death. And his name is Jesus. And then the victory that he won got imputed to you, even though you did nothing. That's the gospel. If you go, I'm like David. You ever read the story of David? He's a murderer. He's an adulterer. Don't be like David. You read the story of Noah. I gotta be like Noah. Really? Noah? Hammered, drunk, naked half the time? You wanna read the Noah story? We teach it to these kids. We're like, hey, you should, because they're coloring giraffes. And we just don't tell them the rest of the story. That God just killed everybody. including the animals. God loves animals. Turns out he drowned everybody and everything. He killed it. He went to war against the world because of their sin. That's what the Noah story is about. 8 people and one of every animal get to float in a little Eden until they can create humanity again. And Noah becomes a new Adam, which points to Jesus. But here's the thing. You know what the beautiful part of that story is? Sally Lloyd-Jones in her book, the Jesus Storybook Bible. Bible I've been reading to my kids since they were young. Subtitle is Every Story Whispers His Name. That story, she points out, of course, God drowns the world and then he puts a rainbow up in the sky saying, I'm not gonna do this again. And she points out that in the Hebrew, that's a war bow. That literally, he's been firing down on the world, judging them, but then he hangs the war bow up because he's saying, I'm not gonna do this again. And where's it pointed? It's pointed at himself, because one day he's going to come down and take the wrath on himself in the person and the work of Jesus. Every story whispers his name. This is what he's trying to say. Every story in the Bible, it's either about you or it's about him. And when you're doing your devos in the morning and you're reading the Gospels and Jesus is hanging out with the hookers and the prostitutes and the bad people, and you're reading that story and you got your morning coffee, how do you read that story? You're like, I'm Jesus and I'm gonna minister to all the hookers. Guys, I hate it. You're the hookers. You're not Jesus in that story. You're a prostitute who cheats on Jesus every single day of your life and needs the grace of Jesus to be close to you in order to survive the day. There's only 2 ways to read it. And so the Apostle Paul is saying, the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile. And then he says this, for all, this is one of the great passages, right? For all, meaning Greek word, means all, have sinned and fallen short. So this is offensive, right? The idea that you've sinned. In our modern culture, the idea that you are sinful is, of course, extremely offensive, because we want to think we can save ourselves. We want to think, I'm good, no problems. Literally, the word for sin is to miss the target, like an archery term. And what this is trying to say is you are sinful, whether you know it or not. You have missed the mark. You have fallen short of the glory of God. There's nothing, you actually need saving. That New Ageism is wrong. You are not divine. You can't go inside of yourself and find the divine in you. And that naturalistic evolutionary theory is wrong, that you're not an animal. You're not hopeless, and you're not the answer. You are sinful, you are broken. You feel that plight too, don't you? See, some people come along, if you're skeptic and you're like, yeah, I felt like that when I was outside the church. I would hear people call people sinful, and I thought, oh, that's mean. You can't put that on kids. It's wrong to put that on kids. It's gonna get into their psychology. And actually, psychology that was developed, Ernest Becker and others talked about this in one of his Pulitzer Prize winning books. He talked about the idea that it's actually a lot of shame and guilt that we deal with in life when we don't have a term like sin to describe it. We know something's wrong with us and we don't know what it is, so we keep looking to ourselves, and so we just keep going on the shame and the guilt. We don't understand what the solution is. The point is this: when this says we're sinful, that means we can't be our own saviors. And when we can't be our own saviors, that's just freeing, right? It's freeing because it means you don't have to be perfect in your marriage. It doesn't mean you're the solution in your marriage. It doesn't mean you're the solution all by yourself for your financial problems. It means you need help. And the first step is admitting it. And that's the difficult part, is admitting that we need something or that something's wrong with us. You guys know that I have preached here a few times. I have Tourette's syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder. So that's why I, do these like weird tics with my face. And parents got divorced when I was like 8, and something happened traumatic where my psychology changed, and now I do these tics and obsessive compulsive where I have to like touch things a certain amount of times and do certain things. So one of those things is someone hands me something fragile, I'll just squeeze it to the breaking point. So changing light bulbs is a disaster at my house. We go through boxes of them just to, can you change one light bulb? It's like, yeah, shoot, I gotta get another one. Someone hands me a wine glass, it's like, I'll just, like till I hear it start to crack. It's like, and it's just plastic for you now, Mark. True story, years ago, I come home, my kids are super young, I was at work, and it was around Easter, and they'd worked on these Easter eggs all day, where you take the Easter egg and you blow the yolk out, this little thing, and then you paint it. And I came home from work, and my little daughter, she's like 5, she's like, Daddy, look at my Easter egg. I'm like, oh, baby, that's beautiful. My wife's like, what is wrong with you, man? I'm like, she's like, you have a problem. I'm like, I don't have a problem, I'm fine. Literally, true story, 5 minutes later, the younger one, look at my thing. Oh, that's beautiful, honey. At that moment, I realized I had a problem. Like, it's hard to admit it. When someone tells us something's wrong with us, it's really hard to admit it. To go, oh, I might have something I gotta deal with. We live in an echo chamber of ideas that bounce around, and we just believe our own press. Scary place to be. Because what you need is something objective outside of you to come along and tell you something that you may not deduce about yourself. And that's what the Bible just did. You have sinned. You are, the Latin term is, Martin Luther said, homo incurvatus, humankind curved in on themselves. That's us. Every one of us is sinful and in need of saving. And so, how would we ever get saved? He tells us. He says, all are justified freely by 3 things. First, his grace. Such a beautiful word. You know what grace means? It's the word charis. It means undeserved favor. Religion tells you you have to earn it. Do a pilgrimage. Be a good person. Don't watch rated R movies. And maybe when you get to heaven one day, all the good things you did will get you into heaven. That's what the premise of religion. Karma will tell you that in life you get what you deserve. It comes back to you in the next life. It comes back to you in this life. You put good things out, you get them in, right? This is what the New Age philosophy, some of you have been exposed to it, the law of attraction. Have you heard about that? The law of attraction. You speak good things out into the universe, and the law of attraction is it has to bring it back to you. And so if you want a boat, you just put that boat on the fridge, and every day you go boat. Money to me, good things to me, prosperity to me. And the universe has to do it. That's the law of attraction. This is what New Age philosophy teaches. Karma will tell you, you get what you deserve. You get what you deserve. The gospel comes along and goes, no. Jesus got what you deserve. The wrath of God. And you get, it's called the great exchange. You get the righteousness of Jesus. He gets your sin piled up on him. You get here's the grace, undeserved favor. Literally the word infers the concept that you are caught red-handed. Every time I read it, I think of the story that when I got my license, my mom gave me her car. It had been sitting there waiting for me to get my license. She gives me this 1988 Grand Am, all right? I mean, this thing goes from 0 to 100 in 6 minutes. And so it's like, so this was like, here's your car. So I'm like, first, couple weeks, I'm driving up my street, I'm speeding. I look in my rear view, I see cop car. I'm like, oh man. But instead of slowing down, I find myself speeding up. Can't explain why. Not only do I speed up, I turn left really quick. I turn left, and then I'm like, this street's not gonna be enough. I turn right. I am now in a high-speed chase. I'm in OJ land, man. I am just, I'm trying to outrun a cop. This goes on for 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm going, what am I doing? I'm gonna go to jail, my life's gonna be over. I gotta keep going, I gotta outrun this guy. Going down all these weird side streets. All of a sudden, I'm like, I gotta stop this. So I just pulled over to the side of the road. I'm like, what are you gonna do? I don't know. Boom, pop the trunk, get out, and I grab this box. And I'm like, I don't know, I'll just pretend I'm like, what's the reason I'm here? It must be some. He pulls up, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm at my buddy's house. I'm just dropping this box off of books. He's like, that's why you were outrunning me. You know this person? Yeah. This isn't random. No. Okay, go deliver it. And he stands there, and I'm like, okay. So I walk up to the house, like put the box down, ding dong. If someone comes to the door, I'm hooped, right? She can be like, I don't know you. So I come back, I'm like, oh, I guess no one's home. He's like, who lives there? I'm like, Tommy? He's like, Tommy lives there, yeah. And he looks at me with this little twinkle in his eye, and he smiles, and he goes, say hi to Tommy when he gets home, and slow down, kid. And he drives away. He knew I was lying. I'm the worst liar anyway, so he knew, and that's undeserved favor. I didn't deserve it. I'm caught red-handed. He decides to give me grace. This is what we get in Jesus. We don't get what we deserve, which is jail, ruin my life. I wouldn't last very long in jail. I wouldn't do very good. I don't know if you look at me and say, oh, you'd be fine. Through the redemption, all right, this word here means to buy back. It's like an Exodus image. This is why, we could delve into this and why it's one of the great sentences, because there's so many layers of things going on. It's a slave image of people in Exodus, and God buys them back. We can't get in. Now, how did this happen? How did this redemption happen? It happened by his grace, and it happened through Jesus Christ. That's the second thing. It's only in Jesus. That's the only way to be saved. It's the only way to get to heaven. It's the only way to get your life transformed. It's the only way to be forgiven of sin. It's the only way to be justified. No other religion will do. And I know this is controversial, and I know this, like the concept of exclusivity, it's offensive, but the reality is, this is what the gospel says. I'm the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. It's only through Jesus, right? What we tend to do is we tend to say, yeah, all religions lead to God. All religions are equal. And then I say, really? Okay, what about the ones that used to throw babies in the fire and they used to beat on drums to make sure you didn't hear them crying? Well, not those ones. Okay, so what about the cults that make people drink stuff so 900 people die in a single day? Well, okay, not those ones. So not all religions are equal. And then you start to talk through those things and you realize that the gospel comes along and says, we love the concept that all religions would lead to heaven because it's easy and safe for us, because we never have to conflict with anybody. Uncle Bob's crazy around the Thanksgiving table saying nonsense. You never have to challenge him. It's just easier. We love our Ricky Bobby theology, right? You ever seen Ricky Bobby when he jumps out and he's on fire and he's running around? He's like, help me, Jewish God. Help me, Oprah. Help me, Tom Cruise. He's hedging his bets. He's hoping one of those gods would actually show up. We love this stuff. And the gospel cuts right through it and goes, not a thing. It's only by Jesus and what he's done. It's the only way. And then lastly, what about Jesus in particular? It's that God presents him as a sacrifice of atonement. This is a phrase that has multiple layers. Some of your translations will say propitiation, because that's the idea of satisfying the wrath of God, taken from the pagan cultures. Point is, he's a sacrifice of atonement. All the Old Testament images, all the killing of the goats and the sheep and the blood sacrifices, it all led to here. It all led to Jesus. All the fires that people have been creating for thousands of years trying to appease the gods ends with the person and the work of Jesus. Jesus on a cross dies in your place as your substitute, takes the wrath of God on himself, atones for your sin. He proclaims from the cross something very important. What are the three words he says from the cross? Those hugely beautiful climactic words. It is finished. And all we try to do every single day is we try to add to it and go, there's no way it is finished is true. So I'm gonna say Jesus plus who people vote for. And that's the heresy. It is finished. No, but Jesus plus what a person believes about vaccines. No, it is finished. The veil is torn. I did the work. You can rest. The mistakes you've made, the sins you've done, I atoned for them. I died for you, instead of you, and because of you. Now, here's where this thing lands in. All of that is true, and then it ends with this: to be received by faith. That's where you come in. You see, you got to do something with this. Have you actually received it? Or do you just sit as an audience member, listen to it, and go, yeah, this is all great, and then move on with your day? Listen, for 12 years, I was doing Easter and Christmas services up at my church in Vancouver, and the church would double in size, and everyone would show up in their nice pants, dressed up. Grandma brought them. Christmas and Easter, man. And I would say, hey, I'm glad you're here. But the reality is, if you read the Gospels, there's only two responses to Jesus. You either followed him and gave your life to him, or you wanted to throw him off a cliff. There was no third way where you kind of liked the ideas of Christianity, but you just went on with your life. And so, rather than coming here at Christmas and Easter, I would rather you either picket my church, because if you don't believe what I'm saying, then all I'm doing is lying to thousands of people. Jesus became a baby, lie. Jesus rose from the dead, lie. So go picket my church or join it. But don't just come here and then go back to work tomorrow and go on with your life. That's the one thing this can't be. And I would say what I say to you now. You got to examine the thing behind the thing. If you're not someone who's received this by faith, ask the question why, and oftentimes what it is, it's not because you're smarter than everybody else in this room. It may be because you're a coward. It may be because you're afraid of what your girlfriend might think, or afraid of what your coworkers might think, or afraid of what your parents might think. And he's going, the only question with this now for you is, have you received it by faith or not? Now it's on you. And so I pray, Jesus, that the things that keep us from receiving your gift and your accomplishment on our behalf right now would be examined and put aside, and there would be people in this room who would give their life to you maybe for the first time. By repenting of sin, saying, Jesus, I want to trust and put my faith in your finished work on the cross and in the resurrection on my behalf. And that in this moment, Holy Spirit, you would convict them and blow away the disbelief and blow away the fear and just speak to them, that they would give their life to you even in this moment. And if that's you, we just want to chat with you, come to the I Raise My Hand table over to my left after the service. We'd love to give you a gift, pray with you, get you connected. And Jesus, for those of us who put our faith in you initially, I pray that we would grow deeper and deeper and deeper in our understanding of the work you're doing, so that we might point people to you versus us. And that in the time that you've given us, before we pass away or before you come, that we would leverage that for the sake of the gospel and point people to you versus ourselves. And that, as that old theologian said, our life would be defined by preach Christ, die, and be forgotten. That's the testimony of our life for your glory and the good of people. In Jesus' good name we pray. Amen.